You're the one with the button.
I'm doing it and it's done. Hello, welcome to Hidden Existence. I hope everybody's doing all right out there tonight. Sorry, we're not as quick as Jason would like me to be. I did press it. I was just waiting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just saying. I mean, you just
All
like,
right.
are we ready to go? I'm like, I'm waiting on you. You push the button.
I did push the button. I did. I was just I have to wait for it to go live before I say anything.
Gotcha.
I'm just
Yeah.
sorry, just doing the do. How you doing, Jason?
Oh, I'm wonderful, Daniela. How are you?
Good. I'm good. It's good to see you because I've not seen you since last night.
Last night. I know it's been
Yeah,
so long.
I know.
I wept at hearing your voice when I came back on backstage. I was just, it's so much. It just all the memories are flooding in.
I know. It's overwhelming, isn't it? I'm
It
even
is.
losing, choking up now thinking about it.
Yeah.
But we've got a great, interesting show tonight. We're going to talk about Northern Lights, or what happens in the sky, what it's all about. We've got someone here who's going to fill us in with all the details. It's Joe from Alaska. How are you doing, Joe?
Well, I'm doing just fine. How about you, Daniela?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Right on.
We're
Having a good time?
yeah, it's
Oh,
fun.
absolutely.
I'm with Jason. It's always a good time when I'm with Jason. So
Always a good time. So,
yeah.
whereabouts in Alaska do you live?
Right now I am out in Point McKenzie, which is as the crow flies about 10 miles north of Anchorage, but it's about a 80-mile drive because you got to go all the way around
Mm-hmm.
the inlet right over there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting. So,
So
what's that flag behind you?
Oh, that's the
What's
that
the flag?
direction. There we go. That's the Alaska flag. It's the Big
Oh,
Dipper,
really?
oh
and then all the way at the bottom
Oh,
corner, there's another star, and that is Polaris, the North Star.
wow, never knew that.
really?
Never even thought about that. What the stars
Um,
were for.
and the way you figure it out is if you look at the Dipper, it's 7 times the length from these two stars. It's not accurate on the flag here, but 7 times
Right.
the length between these two stars, straight. If you drew a line 7 times
Mm-hmm.
the length, you would find the North Star in the sky, and that's how you would locate your northern direction if you were in the woods, didn't have a way to navigate, and it was clear enough to see the stars.
Yeah.
You
Or
could get a
you're in the
pretty.
open ocean and you're trying to navigate it old school with a sextant.
Mm-hmm. I need to learn how to do that. I've spent a lot of time out on the water, and I am honestly a little disappointed in myself that I don't have the ability to navigate without the help of electronics. And I really think learning how to use a sextant would be a very useful piece of information.
I could not disagree. I couldn't disagree at all with that. I completely agree. In fact, Daniela, you and I'm ashamed of both of us that we haven't learned how to do that.
How do you know I haven't? You never asked me.
I know these things, Daniela.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I know all.
I
So
just,
so
All knowing, all powerful.
yes.
I
Daniela,
just,
please, no.
yeah, I
Please.
was just gonna say, like you say that's the Big Dipper. We see all these different constellations in the sky. I can't even think of a name. The Southern Star and the Bear. Is it the Bear?
Yeah, I believe its scientific name is Ursa Major, and then the Little
Yeah.
Dipper is called Ursa Minor.
Why? How are they picking? How did they pick them out? Why are they the brightest star? Is it because of the brightest stars? Why are they the brightest stars? And then they join the dots. I mean, how have they worked that out? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure how the ancient peoples chose the stars that they did to draw the lines between to make the constellations, because I look up at the night sky and I don't really see it a lot of the times, but there are a few like, oh hey, there's Orion's belt. I can kind of see a dude there,
Mhm.
and okay, I suppose that sort of looks like a ladle, but it's funny when you see the picture and it's it's like the whole Ursa Major constellation,
Mhm.
and it's not just this, and it's a whole bunch of other connections. But this is supposed to be the bear's tail.
Yeah, it's
Bears don't
supposed to have
have
a long
tails.
tail. Yeah.
That's
Well, they
strange.
don't anymore. Maybe. Yeah. No.
I
So
think
actually, I do have a minor answer to Daniela's question, but please continue about Ursa Major and the long tail.
I think if there was long tails on bears, we would have found some evidence of that in the historical record, or at least in the fossil record. Unfortunately, we haven't. So I'm not entirely sure why, when ancient people decided this was going to be the Great Bear, they made that the tail.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, it's like Canis, right? Canis is literally 2 points. It's just a line.
yeah.
I'm like, the last time I checked, 2 points made a line. It doesn't make a dog. Like some of these, like you said, you can kind of see an image, but I'm like, why is this one? Like it's just a line. Why don't you just call it the line or the triangle, or It's like, no, this one's a dude who's also a centaur with a bow and arrow, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
that.
And then there's a giant snake over there, and over there there's a crab, and
Seven Sisters. The Seven Sisters is one, isn't it? That's what I see here.
Yeah.
Because we'll see different things.
The Pleiades.
Yeah.
Like it was really trippy when I went to Fiji for the first time, because that was the first time I was on the other side of the equator, and it's a little island group way out in the middle, not exactly the middle of Pacific. It's closer to New Zealand than anything, but it was really cool and kind of trippy because I'd look up and not recognize any of the constellations whatsoever.
Yeah.
But they were all so bright because there's hardly any light pollution.
It would have looked a lot different, wouldn't it? Back then.
Mm-hmm.
To what the sky does now.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. So you get to see the beautiful Northern Lights there. I mean, really good compared to, I think, what we get to see down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what latitude, do you know what latitude you're at roughly?
No.
I'm on the 33rd degree parallel.
Okay. I think we're up here on the 20th, I believe. We're up here pretty far. And yeah, the Northern Lights, when they're at the weakest you can see them, assuming it's clear enough and you have a clear view to the North Pole, we can see Northern Lights when there's just enough energy deposition hitting the atmosphere to see them. And I will go out there occasionally at 3 a.m. or something, and after checking the aurora forecast, and it's like, oh, there will be maybe just barely 0.5% of a chance to see them in Anchorage, and you go out there and spend about half an hour letting your eyes adjust, just staring at the North Pole, and then you see some faint green fuzz over there, and it's like, oh, yep, there it is. It's not doing anything, but sure is.
But so real quick, for people who may not know, what causes the Northern Lights?
So the Northern Lights are caused by the sun accelerated. The sun is basically just a giant particle accelerator, and these particles will sometimes get blasted off of its surface in the solar wind or in coronal mass ejections, and these particles will have a magnetic field. And
sorry, what's the coronal mass I can't remember. What is that?
Mass ejection.
Yeah, what is that?
So what happens is the surface of the sun will since it's so large, it can actually build up its own magnetic fields in certain places that are different from its main magnetic field that runs through its north and south poles. And when you see pictures of the sun, and sometimes they'll have loops like in sunspots, that's actually the magnetic field lines that you can see twisting up and winding up inside that particular area of the sun, and it builds up energy kind of similar to how like a rubber band does.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get tangled enough, or a bit of a event can happen, and they'll break and send loads of energy and charged particles out into space, and that'll be a coronal mass ejection. And yes, there was a coronal mass ejection about 10 days ago, and unfortunately for us, as far as northern lights go, it was just rotated past us, and it missed us by a couple million kilometers, which is not much in the solar system. But
well, but us itty bitty people, it's a significant distance.
Well, yes, of course, here on Earth, that is huge. That's at least around the globe 20 times, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we got to be like 300 million miles from the sun or something. So
yeah, we're 8 minutes at the speed of light. Yeah,
yeah,
we're a significant distance. So the coronal mass ejection that happened 10 days ago, like I said, it's not going to hit us directly, which is also kind of a good thing, because coronal mass ejections, because of the amount of the charged particles, can cause all kinds of havoc with power lines, satellites, communication, all kinds of things. In fact, that's one of the great fears people have. But because it has missed us, are you expecting a more lively northern lights with since it's a glancing blow? We're still getting a lot of those particles, just not a dangerous amount. So, but are we expecting it to get all hyperactive?
As of right now, there's no activity that'll cause northern lights. Although we're in the solar wind a little bit, which can cause, which it can spark it up occasionally, but it's nothing to really get too excited about. But when the CMEs come, how should I put this? When they're facing towards Earth and directly at us, we'll see what's called a full halo CME, and the pictures will be very spectacular. And those are the ones you want to look out for, because they're headed right for us.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, hugely magnetically charged clouds of gas, electrically and magnetically charged clouds of gas, will be headed our direction, carrying upwards of thousands of gigawatts that they could just dump into our atmosphere and fry electronics, melt telephone cables off the poles, blow transformers up, they don't really melt satellites, but they can like ionize the surface of them and cause
outages, blockages of communication. It can cause them to fry, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
And to think many moons ago, Strangeland says some ancients looked at the northern lights as dancing gods. I mean, people just wouldn't have had a clue, would they, what spectacular shows were about, especially at night, when the sun's down and suddenly the sky lights up.
Mm-hmm. I think about that a lot. Like, if I didn't know the science behind a lot of the things that I see, how would I explain them? And it seems like God would be the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Oh. No, absolutely. So essentially what you're saying, and just for those who are listening, the northern lights, because they are our atmosphere reacting to these particles that they're being emanated from the sun. So these pictures in video that we get of these really elaborate, really bright and energetic and active northern lights or aurora borealis, those are because we're being hit with more particles. It's a more direct hit. That's what I'm hearing?
Yes. And they're all every single no event is the same. They all come with different power levels. They carry their own magnetic field, which can be northernly charged or southernly charged. And when it comes to getting the northern lights the strongest, we need to get the most southernly charged particles, because of the way that they interact with our magnetic field. When they hit it, they will, because they're southernly charged, they will attract to our northern hemisphere and sort of funnel into the where all of the magnetic field lines go down in the Arctic and circle through the center of the planet.
So in that case, so from what I'm hearing, so then when we look up and we see, because they do look like lines that are sort of snaking through, are those actually magnetic lines themselves?
Yes. So when you see the aurora and it's banded nicely, those are actually the magnetic field lines of the planet that you can see that are channeling these charged particles towards the poles. And the way these charged particles interact with our atmosphere is the way they actually make the light. They hit ozone and nitrogen molecules, and depending on how much energy they have, they're normally green, of course, but with more energy, they will bump up the energy levels of the oxygen and nitrogen molecules, and they'll release different colors like reds and blues and very seldomly purples and occasionally some orange too, I've heard. But that's usually really rare. Most of the time it's just green.
Or the green-yellow spectrum.
Yeah, green and yellow for the most part.
Daniela?
Oh, you're muted, Daniela.
You're muted.
I was just downloading an image just when you talked about banded.
Oh, gotcha.
They do look incredible, don't they?
Yes.
When you're looking at them, like you say, when you actually know what the science is, it kind of changes the whole thing about them, doesn't it?
I think it makes them scarier to a point. It's like before they're just pretty. Now you're like, no, this is the sun trying to murder us with the coronal mass ejection and send us back to the Pleistocene.
Jamie Cotterill says, growing up in the Arctic, we were told never to whistle at the northern lights or they will come down and strangle you.
Ooh.
I've actually heard that.
I've heard that one too. The way I've heard it is if you whistle for the northern lights, they'll get brighter and come pick you up and take you into the afterlife, or at least I believe that was the Alaska natives' interpretation of them. But luckily, they can't actually hurt us physically. They can't make it through the magnetic field and then also the atmosphere to get down to our level and do damage to us. But of course, a strong enough one could, would obviously destroy the power grid. But it also could do a lot of damage to the ozone layer, which would let in a lot more UV radiation and would fry a lot of plant life on the planet, and that would be less than optimal. But those sort of events are so astronomically rare that I can't actually think of an instance where that specific thing has happened.
Well, yeah, probably not one of those things we want to have happen.
No, of course not.
At all. Like you said, having our ozone ripped away would be suboptimal. So just sort of moving on a little bit, because again, the northern lights is actually evidence that our atmosphere, the ozone layer, is doing what it's supposed to do. Our magnetic fields protecting us from all of this solar radiation that would essentially make life unlivable on Earth. What other things about either atmosphere or space that's going on right now that has you interested at the moment?
We are going to have a really close encounter with a comet. I believe they're classifying it as a comet. Maybe it's a meteor now. I'm not sure. NASA was like, "Ooh, it's really dangerous, but it's not." On the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty close call, but it's going to miss us by enough that it's nothing to worry about. But I think this chunk of rock that's like a couple 100,000 tons is going to pass between the Earth and the Moon's orbit, so it's coming in pretty close.
Yeah, that's real close from a astronomical perspective. Will we be able to see it clearly, or will you still need like a telescope to see it?
I think if you had a telescope right now, you could see it. I'm fairly certain it's actually already past us. I believe the close event was supposed to be yesterday and the day before.
Gotcha.
I haven't really kept up to date on it. I should have, but I really was not worried about it. But yeah, I believe that you could see it with a telescope or maybe even a good pair of binoculars right now.
Excellent. So people have been mentioning these things called Carrington events. Apparently, there's one that happened in the last back in the 1880s. So, what either is a Carrington event or was the Carrington event?
So, the Carrington event. This was a single event that we called. This was a coronal mass ejection back in 18. Now, I don't want to give everybody the wrong date, but I believe it was somewhere between 1870 and 1890.
Yeah, everyone's saying the 1880s, but
okay.
I'll look up the actual date. But please continue.
Okay. So the Carrington event was the strongest coronal mass ejection that we have on record, and by this time on Earth, we had telegraph lines going up all over the U.S., and I believe they were beginning to lay underground cables or underwater cables to the over the pond over there. And what happened was this coronal mass ejection hit our planet pretty much dead on, with enough power that the telegraph operators, this was back in the old days of Morse code, I believe.
Yes,
so they had the little clicker buttons. The telegraph operators were getting shocked. There was so much energy slamming into our atmosphere. Our magnetic field was so bombarded that it was actually able to induce a voltage across these lines that spanned the country, and this voltage was high enough to shock operators, blow transformers. In some cases, the lines literally melted off of the poles and started fires. And there was even another story I read of some operators that were still functioning. They noticed that even though they weren't actually putting electricity into the line to carry the signal, they could still tap a signal out and it would make it to the other end of the line just from the energy that was being input into it through the magnetic interactions.
Yeah, it's according to Wikipedia, the fount of all knowledge, apparently. It happened September 1st of 1859. So yeah, this was definitely that's pre-Civil War for us Yanks. But yeah, I mean, coronal mass ejections are something that I was reading up years ago, and a lot of people are really worried that our current electrical grid wouldn't be able to hold up to it. If we had gotten something very similar to the Carrington event, that a full-blown hit of a large enough power would essentially, if it was big enough, would essentially just put us all back in the Stone Age if people didn't act fast enough to shut, like right now, everyone's like, we would just have to shut everything down, which you really can't even do. But they're worried because of what happened in 1859.
If another Carrington event level solar flare happened, we would have about 15 hours of heads up from when we got the pictures from the from all of our stations that we have. We've got some satellites. We've got a LASCO satellite. I'm trying to remember how they acronymed it. It's like Large Area Scanning Coronal Observatory. Yeah, that's it, I think. And we've got some satellites that are on the same orbit as Earth that will take pictures of it, and we'll have about 15 hours of heads up. And if everybody were to jump into action, which would be unplug every single electronic device that you have, put it in the basement or as far down and covered as you can get it,
or put in some sort of Faraday cage.
Yeah, a Faraday cage would be the safest bet. That would actually block out the inductance from the magnetic fields. Power crews would have to come and disconnect transformers on every pole connected to every house in the country if we wanted to save our transformers, which there's no way that's happening.
No.
And they would also have to they'd have to cut power lines just to save the power station itself as well, because the back voltage would be so massive it would probably blow the station up.
Yeah. Yeah, it would not be a pleasant time.
No,
and if we didn't catch it in
not.
time, essentially we'd go back to the Stone Age, and no one knows how to do anything anymore. So that would make things very, very awkward. Just for hold on, it just disappeared on me. Raptor, we are talking about a coronal mass ejection, which is different from the Aurora. Just saying. Yeah, no, we're talking about a coronal mass ejection. I think his phone blinked out on him when we were mentioning that. Okay. Yeah. So, and again, but the connection here is that particles from the sun is what interacting with our atmosphere is what creates the northern lights. However, if they get and the more intense they are, or the more intense the particles, the more lively it gets. But it can get, again, too lively with a coronal mass ejection. And sometimes it gives us very pretty lights and little outages, and then sometimes it fries everything on the planet, and that's awkward.
Yeah, I think if everybody kept their cool, which is what we should do, if all of the power goes out, don't go running to your local store and just, kick in the door and start stealing stuff to feed your family. If everybody just stays reasonable, I think we could probably make it through it as a society while suffering minimal losses. But most of our electronic devices would no longer function at all. That would be GPS. Your phone would not work. The internet would guaranteed be down.
This would really be a problem for people. Like, seriously, there's a generation that grew up with a phone, and there's those that never grew up with internet or anything. And there's a huge difference in how we rely on things.
Danielle, it's worse than that. Our entire system, I love everyone who thinks who's like, man, I'm out in the woods all the time. Our entire existence is predicated on the idea of electricity. Every tool you've ever used, again, like Joe was saying, if we were smart and everyone did absolutely everything possible to disconnect everything, we wrapped everything, we could probably weather it out for a few days.
I don't have a cellar. I'm not going to keep a Faraday case. Yeah. I mean, that's it.
I don't have one. I don't have. Now I need to make a Faraday cage. I should. Again, being as close as I am to Dallas, we're still kind of theoretically in danger of a nuclear attack from time to time. But the point here is, if things go as bad as they possibly could, this means every gasoline gone, because there will be no one to manufacture it, no one to drill it, no one to truck it to where you are. So if you're living out in the woods, your gasoline supply, whatever you have on hand, that's all you got. And you better pray that it doesn't blow up during the event, because a lot of containers are metal, or if it's anywhere near anything that could spark, gone. You don't have electricity. That means zero refrigeration. Most people who even
your
live out in
fridge
the
and
woods,
freezer, all your food storage,
gone.
anything that's non-perishable or anything that's perishable, might as well just kiss that goodbye.
So it's zero electricity, zero cars, zero everything for 10 years.
At least.
If everything, that's assuming the worst case scenario. So the problem is, at that point, we are looking at, essentially, you go back to where it was in the 1800s. Most people do not, even people who live in the woods and they're like, we're off the grid. You're not off the grid. Not 1870s off the grid.
You are in some way reliant on everybody else doing things to make sure that everything stays working, to make sure that you can stay alive as long as everybody else.
Yep. And here's the problem. Honestly, even the 1800s is a bad equivalent, because you could still go and buy dry goods. You could buy glass jars to preserve things in. We can't even do that. If this were to happen, we're going back to before, really, the Stone Age. You would just have metal tools, or the Iron Age is a better equivalent, because you're like, well, I know how to preserve food. Great. Where are you getting your sugar from? Where are you getting your glass jars from? Where you're getting your lids from? Because you're only gonna have what you have on hand. Period. Nothing new is coming in. Most people do not have the ability to do what you need to do to preserve food through winters or through most people don't even have access to enough land to grow food and animal husbandry skills to survive something like this. Again, if a coronal mass ejection like the Carrington event were to hit and we were unlucky, you go back to the Iron Age real fast. That we are going to see things like disease and starvation on the levels we've never seen in human history.
All major population centers would probably, within 10 days of the power grid going down to maybe as much as a month, would probably devolve into ruins, most likely, just because that many people would not be able to support themselves naturally and would be fighting for food and resources. Like, could you imagine Los Angeles losing power for ever? How many people live in Los Angeles? Like 10 million people? That's way too many people for that small of an area. There's no way that many people could even work together in that small of a space without electricity and the internet to provide even the basic necessities for themselves: food, water, like the minerals and stuff that your body needs, all that kind of thing.
Cheese Freak says this is why you prep and never tell anyone.
Well, so here's the problem. A coronal mass ejection, you can't prep enough for this. See, this is whatever I'm seeing everyone in the chat. They're like, well, we don't need sugar to, like, Miss Alex said, you don't need sugar. You do need sugar for long-term canning. You absolutely do. I'm just telling you, no one is prepared for this. Everyone who thinks that they can be off the grid, you are not anywhere near off the grid.
You have no idea what life will go back to with no electricity. You'll be going... So, to make your fridge work, you'll be waiting till winter, going down to your local pond, sawing blocks of ice out and storing them in a shed for when the summer comes, and then you come and you go and chip off chunks of ice that you would then use to put in an ice box, or you could put it in your drink, I suppose. But and that's how you would keep things cold. But even then, it would be like having to keep a fire stoked constantly, because you'd have to go out to your ice shed and go grab yourself an armful of ice to throw in your fridge and an armful of logs to throw in your stove, and and most people don't really know that. Like, and the other thing is, it would all be hand tools. Nobody knows how to make hand tools anymore. Like, how many people would know how to make a hand crank drill, a crosscut saw, snowshoes, boots, winter gear? Like, you would most likely need to make a lot of your own supplies.
So to answer Fred Muppet's question about salt, salt works as a preservative for certain things, and it's not just here we'll add salt. It is an entire process to preserve, particularly meats, for long-term storage. It is not something that you just throw salt on it. And by the way, great. What about for everyone who doesn't live within walking distance of the ocean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone who doesn't live within walking distance of the ocean, not even, again, walking distance, you're going to have to trade salt.
That's like 50 miles, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's probably the most people would be able to walk in a day. Or even like as a couple day trip to the ocean to go collect salt, you know?
And most people have estimated that just the continental United States, without modern technology, that means no fertilizers, that means no cars or trains to transport. This nation, as abundant, we're like this, our nation alone could feed the world if we did things right. We could feed everyone on the planet. However, without all of these modern conveniences, modern irrigation, transport, all of that, fuel to harvest everything, this nation can only support about 20 million people, period, end of story.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the continental United States. 20 million is the max. That's it. And everyone's like, well, we'll just go out into the woods. You can't have 330 million people go into the woods.
There aren't enough woods. There aren't enough woods left. We've logged so much, and so much has been taken over by industrial areas, and
that's actually not even a problem. We actually have we actually have more trees than we did during colonization. The problem is, because we've done a great job of replenishing it, the problem is 330 million people require an awful lot of food, and that's just something people don't understand. You're not going to catch enough squirrels for that. There aren't enough squirrels in North America to cover this many people. We're going to see things like disease and starvation. No one's prepared for this, and there's maybe a handful of people who are. I mean, but the problem is, even most of those people who are preppers and ready, they still don't understand how dependent they are upon electricity. The point here being, coronal mass ejections could be a real problem. And like you said, we're going to have like 15 hours worth of notice if we're lucky. So what kinds of things would we be looking at if a coronal mass ejection of this type were to hit? What kind of things would we see atmospherically?
Well, from our perspective, assuming you didn't actually see any of the solar images, you wouldn't notice anything until the cloud actually hit Earth. When it did, if it was nighttime, no matter where you are on the planet, you're going to see northern lights. Doesn't matter if you're in Alaska or if you're in Cuba, you're seeing them. And if you see them in Cuba, bad times are coming. And yeah, you'll probably be able to look around and see, power lines becoming hot, sagging on the power poles, some cases probably igniting and melting.
People with with pacemakers would probably just die because their pacemakers would literally explode in their chest.
The magnetic interaction would be probably strong enough to shut down most pacemakers or internal function machines that we have implanted in a lot of people now. Even my mom has a back implant that helps deal with the pain that she has. And unfortunately, that would probably stop working because, well, we wouldn't have any electricity to put into it in the first place.
Right. Well, what about these chips that that Elon Musk is talking about being ready by 2022? They're supposed to. They want to put them in your. Oh, have you not heard about this?
No.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I've
they want
heard
to
about
insert.
it.
So, yeah, they want to insert it into your brain. For people who may not have heard, they're hoping to have this ready by 2022. It's not just a chip. It's a series of chips and wires connected to electrodes that they want to insert into your brain that ostensibly would allow you to be connected to the internet, no matter what happens. You're just your brain is that. I can't imagine that your skull is going to protect that equipment in your brain from just detonating in your skull.
It might not full on detonate, but it will probably cease working and you will probably have a seizure and die, just keel over dead. I honestly don't know what the technology would do to your brain if it started malfunctioning. I'm definitely not going to get it because we're unfortunately due and probably overdue for another Carrington event.
The thing is, people lived without all this before.
For thousands of years.
All of human history. But the problem is when you become dependent is that we're entirely dependent on it. Again, people who even reenactors, it's like most people just do not understand what life was like 100 years ago. I mean, we just don't understand what that life was like, much less, I mean, literally we are talking about pre-industrial age technology. Everything's by hand or animal power. Again, most people don't have the kinds of wells needed to extract water. Now,
clean water would be a huge problem for a lot of people.
So someone had mentioned, by the way, from my just memory of how the chip is supposed to be set up in your brain, I think pretty much everyone would die because you have there's several electrodes that they have to have in your brain so the chip can actually interact directly with your nervous system. I would imagine that would start arcing pretty quick during a CME of this level that we're describing. That would just basically fry most people's brains. I mean, I would imagine that would kill you. But going back, someone had mentioned that they thought that we were seeing more, as we're either the solar minimum or maximum. I forget which one it was that we're in. That are we seeing more CMEs, more flares, more ejections, or are we seeing less?
So right now we are entering solar cycle 25, and these cycles are on, I think they're on a 2-year wave, I suppose, where they peak and then taper off after a little while and then peak again. But what's scary about this particular solar cycle is the fact that the last solar cycle was relatively quiet as far as solar activity goes. And there are some people that are concerned that this solar cycle could bring some really intense sun solar weather that would it could bring about the Carrington event again.
So what I'm hearing is that given this knowledge, we really do need to look at having most people's idea of prepping is not even conducive to this. It's a total rethink. You basically have to think back to what would life be like in the Iron Age. You don't have access to because you're not going to be able to. Everyone's like, well, we'll just trade for stuff. You're not trading for anything because nothing new is coming in. You're now a completely closed system. There's no electricity. There's no access to electricity. Probably any electronic device you would either even if you have a solar power, it's like, well, I'll have solar powered stuff. Your solar powered things are gone. All those wonderful solar panels you have in your house, done.
Your inverter will fry itself, and that's what you need to turn the DC power that your solar panels make into AC power that your electronic devices use. And the panels themselves, because of their construction, have a lot of cables in them that would interact with the high magnetism and energy in the atmosphere and would probably stop functioning.
Yeah,
so
as we mentioned, that Greg Olson points out, there'd still be solar electricity. No, that's what we're trying to tell you. Your solar panels are toast.
Making electricity will be really hard if you don't have electricity. Like, if you think about it, you're going to have to make electricity from nothing. Like, so you're gonna mine your own copper, wind your own coil, build your own engine. Like, how many people can do that?
We need this, though. Jane Hudson says, in existence prepping 101, but Daniela, we want a series. We should do, shouldn't we?
No, we absolutely should. I think it's a great idea.
Because
Greg mentions because Greg says he's got a Faraday box. I think that's great. I need to build mine. But unless your Faraday box is large enough to include all of your solar panels, like, your solar panels are toast. And again, this is what people don't understand. Any metallic object that's not, in a grounded Faraday cage, your forks will literally be arcing. Like, that's what people don't understand. The tines in your forks are going to arc.
You won't even need your electronics, though. For what? There's not even going to be an internet company.
Yeah, you're gonna turn on your phone and it's gonna be like, oh, the clock doesn't work. It doesn't know what day it is. There's no connection. There's no Google. You can't message your friends. You can't look at Giphy. You can't check your Instagram. All of those things are gone and they're never coming back.
And not for at least a decade. And again, it's like, sharing guys, I've got canned chicken, all kinds of meat. Great. Do you have 10 to 15 years worth of canned chicken and meat?
Do you have the ability to replenish those stocks?
You wouldn't need that.
If you use them up.
You start getting some chickens and cows and start doing that, wouldn't you? Breeding
From
chickens.
Where? See, that's what I'm saying. See, this is what I'm saying. It's like, unless you're...
However people managed before, we just go back to... Well,
but that's what I'm saying. You pulled the rug out from 330 million people.
Survival of the fittest. You know,
Oh,
that's what it will turn into.
It's going to get ugly real fast.
Definitely. No,
Estelle, nothing will work.
The landline's
nothing will
work. The landline will not work.
Definitely not.
Just like the Carrington event, those lines travel continuously across the whole country, and that is a huge area for the magnetic field to interact with and create massive voltage potential. And yeah, it would destroy the phone it's plugged into. It would destroy everything from your end of the phone to the other end of the phone on the other end of the country. Fried. None of it works, and it won't work again even after the flare has passed.
Paradox Fossil says water flow can turn alternators into DC power. I mean, are we not going to be able to use water to create something like the Egyptians or whoever, if you believe that pyramids were some sort of electricity generating?
If you're prepared, that's the thing. Again, I think probably the prepping thing would be great. If you are prepared properly, you could do anything you wanted, right? I mean, we're not saying that you couldn't. This would be it's an event that wipes out humanity. It's just you have to be prepared for a broader world. Without, and again, people are like, well, smart people are in the country. They got cattle and they got land. Great, I'm all with that. I'm right there with you. But most farmers, most ranchers are reliant on food that's being brought in from somewhere else to feed the chicken and the cattle. You're reliant on feed or on seeds rather, and all these other things to farm that. You're reliant on equipment to do the farming. That equipment runs on gasoline. That's all gone. That's what I'm saying. Everything you know is gone. Anything you can't now again, Faraday cages, you could MacGyver anything you want, but you have to have the stuff before this event happens or you're done. You have to have a way to protect these things from, because again, we're talking about wires melting, not just off of the power lines in your house. If you're like, I have all this metal equipment ready, it's like, great, that's all arcing and stuff's going to melt together. That's what we're saying. People just don't begin to understand how bad this is going to get. And again, here's the problem. Let's say you've MacGyvered everything. You can have power all day long. You've got canned chicken for the next 20 years. Everything's groovy. Now you got 330 million people who are looking for you.
330 hungry people. 330 million hungry people. And hungry people are another kind of animal because now we've got this massive brain that gives us a lot of intelligence and this hunger with this huge drive, especially if it's people that need to feed their families. These people will be taking guns to the street, kicking in your door to come and steal your food just so they can eat. It will be survival of the fittest. Whoever is the most prepared, and it will not be, unfortunately, the vast majority of the country's population will probably disappear within the first 3 months.
Oh yeah.
And then, that's the other thing. Medical supplies would almost completely disappear. All of your pharmaceuticals, you wouldn't be able to get aspirin, Tylenol, even like hydrogen peroxide for disinfectant, and bandages would be hard to come by. And it's really a scary thought, but yeah, with how interconnected our society is now, if that went down, we would be in a really horrible place.
And everyone, and this is one of those things everyone's like, well, I'm going to be out in the country, I'm going to be prepped. Great. I think it's a wonderful idea. But you have to remember, you need to be far enough. And again, for this specific event, you have to be far enough that the people from the cities, you think the people in the cities are going to stay there and die? They're going to be walking. You need to be far enough away that they can't walk to you. And then again, you still have things like dysentery. You still have, so again, not to be the Debbie Downer, because I actually don't think it's going to get that bad. I do think we have 15 hours. I know every power company in the world is worried about this. Every government in the world, as incompetent as they are worried about this. So I think it won't. I don't think it would be as bad. Like we are talking worst case scenario. Like this is
for sure.
This is the worst possible case scenario. But I will say this: I think like I said, I do think we need to do prepping 101. Daniela, I think it's a great idea for a show, for an entire series because there's so much to discuss. I think it would be a great avenue to explore. But the real solution to this is getting outside of the cities, but creating a community of people. No one person survives. The only reason our entire species has survived is because we built communities of trust that people knew they could rely on one another. So yeah, I mean, again, we are talking seriously. This is the worst possible case scenario, but community more than. Don't get me wrong. You got to have some skills, right? You got to have amazing hair, like Sky here, right? You got to have amazing hair. So I'm out, but you got to have mad skills, and then you got to have friends, people you can trust within walking distance that you can build a community, because it's the community that will keep you alive. It is community that will see us through such an event, not being the guy that's got all the stuff, because you can't have enough stuff for this. You can't prep enough for a world without all, because there's always going to be something you're forgetting. There's always some aspect of reality. And again, here's the thing: even if you got absolutely everything, and you got enough for 10 years, what if you fall and break your leg? You got to have people there you're going to get sick. There's going to be stuff that you're not prepared for. You got to have people with you. It is people that are going to see you through this.
I mean, it might be a way of cleansing the community in a fashion. I don't know if that's the right. I don't know if that's the right word, but people will be drawn to one another, won't they? And if someone's got a skill that you need, they'll be the handy guy or the handy woman. You will need to rely on people, I'm pretty sure. I was just thinking this, Susan, you'll start eating people.
Unfortunately, that is probably a reality for some people.
Yeah, I think so.
That's why you gotta have the community built ahead of time. This can't be something that comes together.
Culling the herd. Yeah. I'm not sure it will be like that.
It will. It very well could be that.
Yeah. And then we'll have to get into what recipes do we use for human, cooking human.
Oh, anything that you would use to cook pork.
Do you think similar to pork? Do we know this?
There is a reason we're called long pig.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
If you ever hear the word long pig, that means human being.
Right. Okay. Never ever heard of that.
Really?
No.
True. Truly never.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll check it out. But we've almost come to our hour. It's been quite fascinating. I've been doing a lot of listening. People might notice because it is, a mad thing to think about. If this happened, how would we all cope? And I think we just get on with it. And people would fall by the, wayside, but that's just life anyway, isn't it? And we had a power cut, we had a flood a few years ago, and we had a few days with no electricity. I really enjoyed it. I managed absolutely fine. I know it's a different situation, but I could have stayed like that a lot longer and been happy to not have the internet and not have the television and all the other stuff. I think we'd something would happen with us where we'd go back to basics, or we'd start to feel a little more. I mean, I don't know. Who's to say?
No, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. As a species, we would survive, right? And I think we would have, in many ways, we would get back to those things that absolutely matter. So yeah, no, as a species, we will absolutely survive. But there's going to be a lot of people who don't, because we're not prepared for it. Now, again, I tend to be the worst case scenario kind of guy, but on this one, I don't think we're necessarily going to see a worst case scenario, only because I do think there's enough self-interest in the world that we would be able to find a way to maintain most of those things that we need to maintain. Like, it would get ugly for a while, but most of what we needed to maintain, we could maintain, because this is something everyone's scared about. Everyone who knows, again, it's the same thing with an EMP, right? This is essentially coronal mass ejection is an EMP.
It's just a planet-wide EMP, basically.
Exactly. It's from the sun, because the sun is just a giant fusion bomb. I mean, that's what it is. So it's just an EMP. But so we're already, in many ways, I think a lot of the broader infrastructure is ready for it. So individually, we can figure that out. So are we going full sucrose here with your?
Yep.
It was just.
Yeah. I'm tired of it misbehaving, so I'm just doing whatever with it now.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I was just looking at that because Fred Muppet's from my town as well. We really enjoyed the flood power cut too. Everyone outside was panicking and running to the shop. We were like, hooray! Break out the apocalypse stash and cook on the wood stove and play noughts and crosses. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. It was different.
What's noughts and crosses?
Noughts and crosses. You never played noughts and crosses?
Is this like tic-tac-toe?
I was about to say, I think it's like tic-tac-toe.
Is it like you make a grid, you put an X and an O?
A nought and a cross. Yeah.
Okay, so it's tic-tac-toe. Okay, gotcha.
Noughts,
On board.
noughts and
On board.
crosses just makes it sound easier for us. It
Really?
could be tic-tac. Yeah, noughts. You put noughts and crosses. Call it noughts and crosses. You know, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, it's just one of those
Great.
things. Again, how do you say aluminum again?
Foil, tin foil.
There you go. Yeah, no. I no. So again, I'm right there. By the way, everyone should have at least 2 weeks of food on hand. It's like even if everything's fine, there are still
Water.
floods. There's floods, tornado. Yeah, again, water. There's
Water's
floods,
essential.
tornadoes, ice storms. Again last year we had this polar vortex that froze all of Texas down to Houston. Houston froze. People don't, if you're not from Texas, you don't understand how profound that is. But Houston froze. Lakes were frozen in Houston, Texas. That's an insane thing. This is, it's like for a week, everything was gone. And we had, I knew people who they lost power, and it's in sub-zero temperatures. People, again, it's like you need to be able to survive anything for 2 weeks because you just don't know. Now, however, I believe in future shows we're going to show you how to survive much larger catastrophes. I think this is a great idea. But yeah, you should always have 2 weeks worth of food, water, everything on hand.
Yeah. I brought down in the car
and hair gel, apparently.
And hair gel's essential.
Might be a really handy thing to have on tap.
Or like a bubble, like just a bubble. Yeah, I broke down the other week in the car, and I did a live while I was waiting for the garage to come out to me. And I literally had nothing in the car, and everyone was like, "Have you not got a prepper kit?" And it's like, "What? Why? What?" I was just like in my flip flops, and I had to wait 4 hours, and it was getting quite cold that night. And
oh, did we lose Danielle?
Uh-oh. I think the internet cut out on her side.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
It's happening!
Danielle, can you hear me? I was about to say a reference, and no one would get it except like 2 people. Oh, well. So, okay. On behalf of Daniela, I guess we're just going to have to sit here and keep talking until she comes back on.
I suppose so.
So, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm actually just taking a quick look outside right now, and the sunset is amazing. There's some beautiful looking pinks and reds and oranges just that I can see from here. And that's the other thing about living up here is the sun rose at 10 o'clock and it's 4:21 and it's already almost dark out there.
Just reading the comments. Coming to light. So Fred is saying apparently there may be a problem with the internet, and I don't have. So here's the problem. I don't know. Like, she has to shut off the show.
Uh-oh.
I don't have access to shut off the show.
I guess we're live for the rest of eternity, I suppose.
Yes. All right. Hold on. Ellen's Holistic Heaven just asked a question. She says, "Hi, just got on. Is this Jackie's son?"
Sure is. Somebody noticed. Yes.
Somebody noticed. I gave everyone so many clues by pointing out the flag behind you because people keep asking about what the flag is. I was like, maybe someone will notice it if I keep mentioning. Yes, you are the illustrious Iron Dogger's son.
Right there she is. That's her. And there, and there, and there. All of those pictures. Those are of her and her Iron Dog race.
Yes. So Ellen, Estelle, yes, we can leave. We can leave this. That's not a problem. The problem is the show is going to continue to run forever until Daniela logs back in and it actually shuts it off. So, I mean, we can leave. It's just going to be running. It would just be a blank screen. Oh, I believe so. People are asking where your mom is. She's just hiding,
Yeah, she's in the shadows, listening
lurking.
in from every direction. The walls have ears.
Yeah, she's lurking in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, no, yes. This is Iron Dogger's son, and yeah. So Ellen wins the no prize because she's the only one to notice this.
You
She was the
won.
only one to notice that you have the same background as Jackie. So there you go. So
Hey, there she
congratulations. There
is.
she is. There
Special
she is.
guest appearance from the host of the show, I guess, or the channel I'm hijacking.
Mhm.
Hi guys.
Hi there.
There we go.
Yeah, no.
Her internet just dropped out.
Oh, you're
So
still live.
Mhm.
yep, we're
Yeah,
still
we're
live.
still live.
We don't have a way to shut it off, so we're just in here for.
Yeah, she
Hang on.
hasn't given me access to her system, so
Oh, okay. Permalive.
yeah, so I don't have access
Yeah.
to turn off the feed. So now we can leave, like we can shut this thing down and go home and drink and have a pint on her behalf, but the show's just going to be running.
Wow.
It's just running
So-
into perpetuity.
Hey, she came back.
There she is.
Do you know? I think
She made it.
if you'd have all left, I think it shuts off, Jason.
Does it?
Oh,
Yeah. I would like to experiment with that because I think
right.
that's what happens.
All right.
but,
That's cool. I'd never heard. Yeah, I haven't seen it. My thought was it would just stay on perpetually. From my understanding of StreamYard. Now again, I may be wrong.
I just got a feeling it shuts off. It shuts
Do
off.
we want to try that now?
If everybody wants to leave, well, no, because I want to talk to you after the show.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay,
no.
fine. Then. We'll find a day to try this out because that's an interesting theory. I would like to know if that's the case.
Yeah. Every now and again, my internet cuts out. I don't know why it does it. Only does it when I'm doing a show for some reason. Oh, that's the only time I notice it is when I'm like doing a show. It's really annoying. I don't know why it does it, but thanks for hanging on.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on. It's been fascinating.
yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, we'll get a list together of things that we need, and we'll deal with different events and see exactly what we would need or what we think we would need to get through the hard times, which are probably good for a lot of people. Like I say, I mean, I just think we're so cushioned, aren't we? We've got so much around us, luxuries, and we really just don't appreciate the simple things. And it's interesting. But look, guys, thanks a lot. Thanks to everyone in the chat. I'm sorry if we didn't get to any questions, but I think we interacted quite a bit with you guys. So I'll be here. I won't. I'll be on Bigfoot Odyssey on Tuesday for Drawing Bigfoot with Larry Batson. And
nice.
Jason, what are you doing at the moment? You've got your Siru web channel.
Yes. So actually we I guess I debuted a new show on the Siru Papers channel called Jason McLean Questions Everything. We're talking about that big multicolored winged jaguar that has been Jaguar for my friend Daniela there. That was just gifted to the UN. So we're talking about that. I will be on tomorrow with Rob for Texas Front Porch, and I'll be making an appearance on the Truth Defender podcast on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm in direct competition with you, Daniela.
Oh no!
I know.
I've just put a link to your channel in the chat, and I'll put it in the description as well to the because I don't think I've got the up-to-date one for that.
Yeah.
And Joe, thanks again. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a great time. Cool. That was a cool chance to talk about the Northern Lights and the solar activity potentials and the Carrington event and all that cool stuff.
Definitely stuff we need to know more about.
Mhm.
Even if you don't really
Absolutely.
understand it, it's interesting to know.
I do think that our societies need to be more prepared for things like this to happen. And I'm glad that I am seeing some things in the news that people are preparing and knowing how to prepare for it, but I don't think we're prepared enough.
No.
Mm,
Like I say, I haven't got a cellar. So what am I going to do?
no,
We'll talk. That's another show. That's another
that's
show.
another show.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Mhm.
Everyone take care. And I'll see you all soon. Good night.
Night.